Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics. Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is really Fred Schenkelberg, not a deep fake.
This is Kirk Gray, and yes, no artificial intelligence here.
Well, you get careful with that phrase. Yeah. So, just, I think it was yesterday, it was about 2 weeks ago. I got a comment from one of our peers saying, "Hey, I've been playing with ChatGPT." And then you sent me something a couple of days ago and said, "Hey, this would make a good podcast." You did a couple of queries and what do you think? And it might make a good podcast episode. This other guy was saying, "Hey, it gave a good, okay answer, but I don't think my job's in danger anytime soon."
Well, it'll get better. I mean, I'm just showing you that it's not, they're now ChatGPT 4, they're constantly improving on that. So,
well, there's more training, more, background, and they got the world is their playbook here. They got tons of stuff they can draw from. I got so many issues with it, but one of them is, you asked a question and you sent me a couple of the questions and responses is, what is the best method for testing the reliability of electronics and electronic systems for latent defects and design flaws? Now knowing you were looking for HALT to be the only answer. And read your book would have been a perfect answer back to you. And eventually it'll get smart enough to know, all right, Kirk, he does HALT all the time. So we'll give him that answer.
Well, they included.
You would have been happy. You would have thought they were brilliant, right?
Right.
But you said, what are the best methods for testing? And the first one was design for testability. Well, that's not a method for testing. That's a design method, not a testing method.
You're right.
They didn't even read your question. It picked up a couple of keywords and said, "Oh, these are reasonable stuff in this area." Now, nothing it said was terribly wrong other than not being related to testing of reliability. But if you're talking about how do I create a electronic system that doesn't have latent defects or design flaws, then yeah, it's pretty close.
Well, maybe you should have phrased it, because I'm looking at the same thing. It should have phrased it. These are the things you need to do before you consider the actual testing, and that is one of them: design for testability, design for reliability.
Why no? But that's not the question you asked. You said, what is the best method, which implies that you wanted one answer, right? What is the best method for testing of the reliability? Yeah. And there are answers that are better than others, but each one got like one sentence. And it basically defined a laundry list of different design stuff and modeling stuff and testing stuff.
Right.
So if you're saying, well, what's the best method? Well, prototype testing, stress testing, accelerated testing, HALT, and HAS. And I'm like, okay. And it doesn't give you any criteria as which one's better.
Exactly what.
But it doesn't. Right. It doesn't include when and why any of these would be useful or what circumstance. And you and I would say right away to a question like that, well, what's your system? What's the context? Are you making one of these, or are you making a million of these, or stuff like that? And it's like, so I know it's getting better and better, and that's fine. But I'm looking at it going, this is little more than Google saying, here's 15 things that might be an answer. We'll throw them all up on the screen at you. You pick.
I'd say they did a little more than that. But
is anything is anything there new or novel, or anything that's not already been written about 100,000 times?
Well, I don't know. I still think HALT is new and novel after 30 years, 25 years.
It's not.
For a lot of people, it's still, actual application of it is, to me, proper application of it is new and novel, because people they say they do it, and they have a different definition than what it really, to me, is testing the boundaries, testing the limits, testing.
Well, yeah, you could say that about design reviews too, is people do a design review for the pizza rather than actually doing anything.
Brad, if I ask what are the best methods for testing and
you didn't say best methods. You said the best method.
Yes. Ask for one.
Right.
But if I were to go to a group of reliability engineers, this is what they would come up with. And, Carl may say FMEA. That's one of the best methods to prepare and make them a reliable. If I could have, it could have said I could have asked this question and it would have answered the same way. What are some of the best techniques for developing reliable electronic systems?
I think that's the question that got answered.
That's what it answered. Okay.
So here's the first objection: is that the answer you get is highly dependent on the input, how you phrase the question, and what specific question you put in.
Right.
So do we want to get better at asking questions so that we get the answer we expect, or what? I mean, why is it so dependent on this? Why doesn't it immediately come back and say, well, to me, in order for consultants to get replaced or engineering folks to get replaced in the thinking process is, well, what are the boundaries? And I haven't seen an example yet where ChatGPT prompted for the boundaries. And that's critical to answering these kinds of questions.
And that'll be the next stage of ChatGPT. It will be to ask you questions to further define the answers you're looking, or what the real problem is and what you're trying to achieve. Those are the next stages of this, and that's what I see. I look back at one of the great movies. It was developed in 1969 called 2001: A Space Odyssey. Wonderful movie, and it's really interesting. And at the end, and the major part of the story is at the end, not to do any spoilers, but the HAL 9000, which of course is one letter before IBM, the HAL 9000 computer says there's going to be, and of course it's artificial intelligence is dreaming up a way to get rid of humans that are running the ship. So its artificial intelligence says this thing is going to fail in approximately 16 hours, our major communication system. And they take the board out, they bring it and they show they're probing around on the board, Dave and the two astronauts that are on board. And they say, we can't find anything wrong. But they didn't ask the HAL 9000, what is your basis for making these estimates? What parameters have you measured? Is it a degradation of the signal quality,
or misalignment, or is it board wear out, or whatever?
Board wear out? Are you getting a high current in something? And these things. No, we're never going to accept just the computer's flat out answer.
That is not true. That is blatantly not true, that we're never going to accept the computer's output. You haven't seen a high school kid playing with a calculator. They get a number and they fat fingered about 4 extra digits in it, and they say, what's 2 plus 2? And they type it in real quick and they get 75, and they don't even question it. There, it's on the computer.
Maybe so.
I've seen it. I've seen it. And it's engineers do it too. They say, wait a second, that's out. For example, somebody was doing a reliability estimate for something.
They got an MTBF of what?
No. It was the time to failure of -3 months. A negative 3 months.
Negative 3
months. Said it takes them a month to make these things. So you're saying it failed before we even got the raw materials together? And that was an illegal case. It was a legal deposition I was being asked about. And he says, well, what's wrong with that? And the lawyer was just completely ignorant of reliability statistics, completely. Right. And said, well, what's wrong with that? And he says, it's impossible.
It failed before you even got it out.
It failed before you assembled the raw materials to build it. Exactly. Now she wasn't smart enough to pick this up, and I bet you GPT isn't either, is that there are latent defects in raw materials that will eventually cause the failure. So the initial defect was well before the product was put together. So that could technically be a negative failure rate or negative failure time. But anyway, the GPT part, at first pass, when I looked at it, was one, it didn't answer your question. 2, it didn't ask for boundary conditions or circumstances or situation to do it. And 3, these 10 answers are little more than definitions of maybe 200 different people saying these are things that we would recommend on all the various ways it got trained. So there wasn't, while it wasn't technically wrong in any realms, but it wasn't also technically useful or helpful. It didn't move them any closer to what's the best method, right? It said, well, here's 10. And it's like a shotgun response. And I also saw that with this other response, the examples I've seen in the reliability world is more in the maintenance side. And it was like, this is actually pretty generic fluff. That's a rehash or resummary of lots of generic advice that's out on the net. And I'm like, where's the actual intelligence part, artificial or not, other than it can sift a lot of data and spin it into a sentence. I'm not impressed.
Well, I don't think it's going to come up with new answers that we've never thought of before. It's really, you're right. It's drawing from the internet and drawing from everything it can find on the internet to say this is what you do for reliability. It didn't necessarily answer my question specifically. Then I asked it another question, and I don't know if you read that. I have an electronic circuit board with intermittent failure. How do I best troubleshoot to find out where the failure mechanism is?
I loved its answers. Intermittent failures can be challenging to diagnose. I think both of us have written that at one point or another.
But with systematic approach, you can increase your chance of finding it.
Oh, yeah.
Here are
now
some
this one
steps.
Actually made a lot more sense. This one actually said, start with the non-destructive and move your way through it. And get
visual
more
inspection.
And get
check
more
for temperature-related issues.
Check the power supply. Make sure it's plugged in.
Connectors and components. Test the power supply using an oscilloscope. Test components individually. Check mechanical stress.
Oh no! This one's
all
actually,
these are very good.
It's actually not bad at all. I agree.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's one of these things which brings up the second major issue. And I saw this in an article just the other day. Is that as soon as we collectively adopt chat and AI type generated answers and algorithms and responses to how do I do this intermittent thing? And I get this.
Right.
Who's going to start doing anything new? Who's going to write anything new? If GPT is the only one writing my blog articles, right? Where's the original thought? Where's who's going to train GPT 10 years from now if everything that's being published to the net is GPT generated? And isn't this a vicious cycle where it's training itself, and where's that going to go? And is it going to get any better? Where's the role for actual thinking? And couple that with the idea that if I got it from the computer, it must be right. And did you see the announcement from Google for their ChatGPT lookalike, the Bard system?
Yeah.
It even got reviewed in
All
Wall Street.
Of them going to have Bing, Bard.
Well, Bing's got one, but Bard just rolled theirs out, and they have a great big disclaimer right on it saying, this is just work in progress. We know the answers are going to be inaccurate or wrong. Right. It's not our fault. It's just we're working on it. LinkedIn, which is connected with Bing and Microsoft, is rolling out a program where they ask me prompts and they want me to fill in the blanks on their articles, which were GPT generated. I'm not in the business of training your computer. Come on, go away. It's like, nah, never mind. Don't bother me. But I think that the two problems one is that too many people, and I don't know exact numbers, but I've seen it over and over again. Well, Excel gave me this answer. Well, that answer makes absolute no sense whatsoever. How can you trust that? Well, it came out of the computer, to summarize what I've seen in a number of cases. And then couple that with I'm getting responses that are a average, the MTBF of the internet's responses on your particular question. Yes, it's brilliant that it can read the question and give you an answer that's relevant to that question. And in human, you wrote just a general sentence, not a crafted query. And you get an answer that's reasonable. And your second one is actually reasonable all the way through. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But we realize that as soon as somebody comes up with a better way to do intermittent challenges, right? I didn't see halt on this answer. which would have been a great thing
to
do. They alluded to it, but
use free spray. It does use stress.
Yeah, but it didn't say you need to elicit the failure mechanism or think through what the possible failure mechanisms are, which you and I would probably start with. But it's not that it's a race of which is the better answer. It's when you and I look at a problem, we use our experience and the experience of all the other folks and then narrow it down real quick to get towards an answer. Whereas this thing is summarizing the grand average of responses that it thinks are the search results, and it rephrases it into a paragraph. And I'm like, I don't think regressing to the mean is a meaningful advancement. I think regressing to the answer or to a path forward makes much more sense rather than to the grand average of its training.
I guess I see this as another building block. It's just like when we, all learned multiplication tables. We had to do it manually, and integrals, and we kind of had to
get me started on that. That's
okay. So, but we trusted the calculations computers come up with. But I just see this is for like a new engineer, a new person to reliability, and wanting to know I've got an intermittent function. This would be at least not absolute.
Oh, it's a good start.
I agree. It's a good start. And it's certainly at some point, the ChatGPT, the artificial intelligence, will start asking questions. What do how often does this occur? What conditions have you observed this? Is it on all circuit boards? Is it, there's just things that we would ask. Sure. And I'm all for innovation. I think that, and this one leans towards using check for mechanical stress, gently flex the board or tap the components. All those could happen if you looked at HALT. That would be one of the things that would be stimulated was the same mechanisms. It's free spray or heat gun. All these are excellent guides to a new engineer that's never really maybe read our books or listened to our seminars or whatever. And it's all, at the end, it says, remember, patience and persistence are key when troubleshooting intermittent issues. It may take time to identify the cause, but a systematic approach can help you uncover the problem and resolve it. Mm-hmm. I agree with it. I mean, it's not everything. It's not absolute, and it's going to improve over time, just like all of our computer programs and all of our functioning. And I've used it for other things like writing a poem or making jokes. And I think, unfortunately, it's not great at it, but it's very good at it. And it will be very much better. And it's just like all of our things that we learn, we no longer have to go back to the very, fundamentals of it to extend our knowledge. We, in fact, don't need to go back and reinvent the wheel or keep repeating that. We need to. This gives us a guide and a place to jump off from and try new things. It doesn't ask about running combined environments, or it doesn't suggest running a combined environment or voltage margining or other things that might be something we find out on this circuit that we're trying to troubleshoot would be the most beneficial approach, or that this ChatGPT has not experience with your system, so it's not going to know exactly. But I think that in the future we will see it get much better, and I'm not afraid of it. I don't worry about it. I think that the school, colleges, and everybody has to be worried about essays. And it can write very good stuff.
Apparently now there's a counter GPT app out there that detects when it's been computer generated versus not. So I don't know how that works. So I just did a quick Google search. How do you diagnose intermittent failures on an electronic circuit board? And it said inspects the solder joints, identification, and it's a worse answer than what you had.
Okay.
So I'd have to go through maybe a dozen of these links to find and cobble together a good answer. So I can agree with you that it's pulling together information, but the part where it's, what's the ultimate answer? That might be a question to ask GPT. And if they don't get the idea that this is a quote from a very famous, one of my favorite books, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, they would not come up with 42, which is the ultimate answer.
Well, I'd say, Fred, and all those listeners out there, this is amazing. Go look at it. Go sign on to ChatGPT or, if you want Bard, whatever. But I like to go back to the original search engine, ChatGPT, which are all these. They're all making APIs to interface to the ChatGPT. That's you buy the application API to connect to this engine. So I'd say, I've asked it about I can ask it about anything, but you could ask it about cheese. Okay. Or something, you could just play with it. It doesn't cost anything. It's right there on your desktop, and it comes up with some pretty amazing things. And you might be a little bit impressed. It's not there yet, just like any new technology. It's not complete. But it's building. It's one of the building blocks that we'll see go to a further intelligence of the computers, and it may not have the creativity that a human does, or to put combined. Hopefully not. We'll still be creative, but I think it can also do a lot of fundamental stuff that we don't need to repeat and reinvent the wheel. It can tell us a lot of the things that have already been done and are effective.
Yeah. My objection still.
Don't be afraid.
I'm not afraid. Right. The regression to the mean is generally not a good idea for society. And two is the just trusting it.
No, but the mean may be more than a lot of people have. So getting up to that mean and accepting what has been generally accepted, although I don't, it might use even prediction as a industry accepted standard methodology. And I just would, throw up my hands and say, no way, you can't do that. And most problems are special cause. So don't even try this, But anyway, in fact, I might ask it, go in there and ask it, is MTBF a good measure of reliability?
Geez, I hope it just sends you to go see it, no MTBF.com. That'd be the answer.
It may do that. It may access that.
I'm sure it will. It's all up there.
It's all free to do. I've signed up for a $20 a month for ChatGPT-4, the most advanced one, just to see what it'd come up with. I don't know how long I'll have that, but for the ChatGPT 3.5, it's all free. It's very busy.
How about we do this? Yeah. Why don't we say, if you've got if you're listening to this and you haven't played with it yet, send your questions to Kirk, and we'll come back and talk about some of the answers we got on the future show. Give Kirk some prompts of what you're thinking about. And then you can, on the newest, latest, greatest one, reliability and maintenance related, of course.
Right. Right.
But it's one of those things that isn't going to go the way of non-fungible tokens, and it's going to evolve and get better. So we have more vivid colors of a photo of a famous piece of work that you can buy. Or is it going to get integrated into lots of different activities and stuff? And I'm sure there's a killer application that's yet to be created that will change my mind. But it's one of those things that, I don't trust my computer for anything. So if I'm doing something important, like a model of a reliability calculation, and it's all on a computer, I make sure it's right by multiple methods before I say, yeah, that's the answer. But anyway, I'm not going to convince you. You're not going to convince me at this point, but I'm curious how it evolves. I am, and where it becomes, that makes sense. I got to use that. Yeah. But at this point, I don't see it.
Okay. I don't see it. It's not complete yet, Fred, but I'm just saying it's a building block.
It is.
It's something. It's the early
adopters play toy.
It's just the very early stages, and it just came back. I mean, they just put it out in the last few months or whatever. So, it's in itself it could, just like any our CAD systems, our computers have enabled better technology faster, designs, layouts, analysis, all of that. I can't necessarily double check all the calculations that a computer has for a complex circuit board, but SPICE, the circuit simulator, has been around for a long time, and you kind of have to, I don't know if you don't trust it, and you look at all the equations for each component that it has, calculated, and what model does it use.
Well, it's one of those, it's garbage in, garbage out. And here we're not in charge of the garbage in. It's pulling from all the collected garbage across its training platform, or its training scenarios.
Well, I don't see here any bad advice. I don't see anything. It's like, it didn't say, well, first of all, go to your Mill Handbook 217 and calculate your reliability.
Here's the number for the customer service. Just return the thing. But anyway, let's wrap it up, because I think it's something to keep track of, and help Kirk play with it some more.
Go for it.
Send him a question, and you can do that through accendoreliability.com/go/SOR, or you can contact Kirk or I or anybody on the show through LinkedIn or through our About pages on Accendo. So send him that killer question that you've always wondered about. That we'll see what kind of response you get.
First ask GTP, and then ask me what I would think, and see how my answer compares with ChatGPT.
And when you guys start aligning, then I know the world has ended. All right, thanks, Kirk. We'll see what we got.
Do not be afraid of technology progress.
Yeah, no, it's
coming, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I'm sitting here on a laptop in my studio talking to you in Denver. So
right.
I don't have a string long enough to make that work.
Let's hear it for the engineers that invented all this.
That's right. All right. Well, thanks much, Kirk. Have fun with your new toy there, and
okay.
Let me know how it goes.
All right. Thanks, Fred. Talk to you later.
Yeah. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.